Have you ever been driving your car? You're heading to work, you're heading somewhere, or you're even doing a routine task, and you finish the task, you get to the spot you're driving to, and then all of a sudden you realize, I have no idea how I even got here. So if that's happened to you, chances are you're probably on autopilot. So that state of mind is pretty much how I interacted with the world for the first 25, 26 years of my life. So day to day, I was living strictly in the mind and not in my body. And with a mindset that is like that, it led to anxiety, rumination of thinking, social anxiety, pretty much just an overactive mind is how I operated with the world for 25, 26 years. So in those states of mind, basically think about it like a plane, right? So like a plane, the captain puts it in autopilot. The plane is following a list of it's following a program, and it's just running off of the same automatic program over and over and over. And so that's essentially how it is to live in when your mind is on autopilot. It's basically just as the captain is not driving the plane, or the pilot's not driving the plane, just as that's the case, essentially a person in autopilot, they're not driving, they're asleep at the wheel. Their consciousness is basically barely awake, or not even really awake at all in my case. And so I kind of feel like it was, the whole waking up notion that people talk about in times and different topics with spirituality and stuff. For me, it was literally waking up. That's why, like, the first 25, I literally feel like my life began in my mid-20s, which is crazy to say and think about. But I was asleep consciously. My consciousness was asleep in a way before then. And so once I kind of had the awakening and realizing of what was going on, and that I had, basically been asleep and whatnot, I realized it was then I got the taste of that really, really high state of consciousness through an experience I'll talk about another time. But for me, once I got the taste, I realized it was going to be a battle to try to stay awake and stay present and stay in those states of mind. Even though I got the taste, you drop right back down to reality. And so I realized, it's basically my mission now, and my journey, and my what I have to achieve is more present, basically an obsession with trying to remain present, just continuing that. And the ways that one can do that is completely different for everyone. But I started with first breaking the patterns of, so like the routine tasks, the routine behaviors, the things that I just did every day, walking my dog, driving my car, cleaning, cooking, doing different things like that. I would find ways to make sure that I was staying awake in those tasks, because that's where autopilot, it kicks in. And then when it does, you're just in your mind and you're thinking, you're not in control, and you're just doing this. So for driving my car, walking my dog, I would strategically take different routes. In doing that, your brain is having to, it's not as automatic. It's you're using different parts of your brain when you're doing unfamiliar things, essentially. And so I would also, there are different activities for everyone, creative pursuits. For me, it was cooking. I could go 2 hours straight and just like lock in. Or for some people, it's running, painting, music. There's a ton of different outlets that people have. It's, different for everyone. It could be fishing for some people. So when you're able to get in those states of mind, you're able to access those different states of minds, and then you return back to reality, and the brain is a little less active, and then it resets and comes back down. So for me, it was finding ways to break that barrier and to stay awake. And then the two main ways that I was able to the main way that I've been getting off of autopilot and more conscious is through meditation. Specifically meditation and mushrooms, or let me slow down. Meditation and mushrooms are the two that were able to break that barrier. So there's something called the default mode network. And basically, when this part of the brain lights up, it's in the autopilot. Default mode network lights up, and basically it's just excessive mental chatter, thinking about the past and the future. There's very little attention paid to the present moment. And so when the default mode network is slowed down and less active, it equates to more presence and more paying attention to the present moment. Mushrooms and meditation I will talk about at some point and further in other videos, but this is related to anxiety and all that. For me, the meditation is bringing you strictly to the present moment the more you're practicing, and then with mushrooms, it's quieting the ego down, and it's bringing you to the present moment essentially, because the ego is less active. So with the default mode network and all of that, they relate with autopilot. And when you can, for example, I forgot to mention this, you can study the brain scans of yogis, advanced monks and yogis, the areas in the brain that lights up with the default mode network. Theirs is significantly less activated, or on the images it's significantly less activated. And so there's it's clear proof that there are different ways the brain can operate. And so for me, it was a lot of having to get out of my mind into my body. Yoga was another big one for me. But yeah, overall, presently, it is still a task and it's still a challenge to stay present, but I'm actively doing different things daily to get out of the autopilot type mode. And so over the last few years, it has become a little bit more easier, and I've made a lot of progress with it. But the meditation daily is huge. It's a huge part of this. So for you guys who are watching and have trouble staying in those states, and you're trying to figure out ways of what you can do and all that, I think it's as simple as getting outside, less phone, and also making sure that you're in those routine tasks that you're doing them in different ways, and you're not falling back down into those autopilot modes. So there's several things you can do daily, plus the previous videos I mentioned with anxiety, cold plunge, and heat, as well as fasting. All of these different things are challenging your mind, and when you're combining these kinds of things on top of another, more areas in the brain start coming online essentially. That was my experience. But yeah, that's pretty much it.